Have you ever had one of those fights that looks so trivial on the surface, but is really about everything that's underneath? Last week, a couple that I work with, let's call them Sophia and Daniel, had one of those fights, and it was about a birthday cake. Daniel had bought the cake. Sophia, feeling overwhelmed from the work week, just hadn't gotten around to ordering one. She thanked him, she really did. But later that evening, when they were cleaning up and everyone was gone, she asked him, "Next time, could you maybe check in with me first?" He froze. "All I was trying to do is help." And she sighed, "I know, but you picked chocolate. And you know our daughter hates chocolate." That was it. The room went cold. He felt criticized when he was just trying to show how much he cares. She felt unseen again. They went to bed back to back, both replaying the conversations in their heads, each of them wondering why something so small felt so big. The next day, in our session, Sophia said, "I'm tired of being grateful for breadcrumbs." And he said, "I am tired of trying, but always failing." Both of these sentences just broke my heart because each of these two partners was right in their own regard. But both of them were being defensive and sticking to their own positions, drawing them further apart. That is what happens when love starts to feel like an obligation. Hi there! If this is your first time here, welcome to the Parenthood and Relationship Podcast. I'm your host, Markella Kaplani, a psychologist, a parenthood and relationship coach, and a parent myself. Together, we explore the transformative journey of parenthood and its profound impact on our relationship with ourselves, our partners, and our children, so that we can be present and show up as we envision without having to do more. Let's get into today's episode. Hi, and welcome back to the Parenthood and Relationship Podcast. Today, we're exploring something that every couple feels but rarely names. That slow drift from care to resentment. When love starts to feel heavy. When kindness begins to feel expected. And when your effort goes unseen. This episode isn't about blame. It is about understanding what happens underneath. The psychology of obligation, why resentment builds even in loving relationships, and how to find your way back to genuine connection before it calcifies. So if you've ever thought, "I do everything and it's never enough," or "Why do I have to be the one that is always making the first step?" or "I can't get it right no matter what I do," then this one is for you. Now, somewhere between early parenthood and midlife, many couples cross this invisible line. Love, which once felt like a choice, starts to feel like a job. And that's not because we've stopped caring, but because care turned into currency, something to exchange to keep the peace. You cook dinner, I put the kids to bed. You handle bedtime, I do the dishes. You get a break, and then I get mine. It's fair, but it is transactional. And the emotional generosity that once came freely feels rationed. Here is what most people miss. Resentment doesn't come from doing too much. It actually comes from doing it without feeling seen. When love becomes duty, every act becomes evidence. I did this and you didn't notice. I carried that and you didn't think to thank me. And over time, love quietly turns into accounting. Resentment is rarely about the dishes or who works harder. It is about meaning. For many mothers, resentment hides beneath the phrase, "I shouldn't have to ask." A phrase I've said before, a phrase I have heard in my family home when I was growing up quite a bit. A phrase that I hear a lot of women saying when they step into my office or my Zoom room. A phrase that always seems to trigger the men in our lives. And we're going to see why. That sentence translates to, "I want you to care enough to see what I see without me having to carry the mental load of telling you." For many fathers, resentment hides behind, I can't do anything right. She treats me as though I'm incompetent, which translates into, I am trying, but I never feel like I measure up to what it is that you need. These are two frustrations and they mirror each other. One says, I feel alone in this responsibility, like you don't care to carry it with me. And the other one says, I feel useless in your presence. Both hurt, and both come from the same place. Love filtered through fear. She fears disappearing. He fears failing. So she controls to stay relevant, and he withdraws in order to avoid criticism. And so the gap between them widens, not out of malice, but out of protection. They are both not only protecting themselves, but in fact, protecting the relationship. Meanwhile, both of them are looking at each other as not caring about the relationship. Isn't that such an irony, such a tragedy? So let's just pause for a second. If you're listening right now and thinking, that's us, take a breath. Resentment isn't proof that your relationship is broken, that it has a problem. But it is proof that you have both been trying very hard in ways that don't match each other's needs. It is a sign of fatigue, not failure. And fatigue has remedies. But first, you have to understand what is fueling it. So here is where things get a bit uncomfortable. Because underneath obligation lies a seductive lie that to be good, a good partner, a good parent, means to give endlessly. We learned this from our culture, our family, from movies, from gender roles that are evolving, but are still quite alive. Let's not kid ourselves. Most of us women have been conditioned to equate love with self-erasure, to be caring, to anticipate, to overextend, to sacrifice. And if we stop doing that, we feel like we risk being labeled selfish. Most men, on the other hand, have been conditioned to equate love with endurance, protecting, providing, staying strong. And if they admit they're tired, they risk being labeled weak. So both of us have been conditioned to push through, proving our goodness in quite opposite ways. And that is where resentment breeds. Because goodness without boundaries becomes martyrdom. When your acts of care come through fear, fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of feeling guilty, they are no longer serving as connection. Quite the opposite. They cost. And here's the paradox. Even the person receiving that care can feel this cost. They sense the hidden exhaustion, the quiet resentment, the emotional invoice behind the gesture. You cannot fake presence. It shows. And as always, I am here to speak to both sides. Women and men experience this in strikingly different ways. For my fellow women out there, for all of you mothers, you may feel like you're carrying a lot, that you're emotionally overfunctioning, that you're the one who has to notice everything, to multitask, to manage, remember, soothe, anticipate, and you may be blaming yourself when you snap. You crave relief, but when your partner offers it, it rarely feels right. Because what it feels like is if this relief comes without attunement, then it creates extra work. You will have to pick up the pieces. Here is what your partner may not realize, what the men listening in need to hear. It's not that you need help. You need partnership. Help implies that it is still your job. Partnership, on the other hand, means that you can finally rest. Now, for the fathers out there, you may be emotionally underfunctioning, and that is what you might be carrying. And that's not because you're neglectful. That's not because you don't care. But it could be because of conditioning. You have been taught, a lot of men have been taught, to show love through effort, through endurance. you may not know how to join her in the emotional world that she lives in. So when she says she's tired, you either rush to fix or you freeze. Here is what we women may not realize. You're not indifferent. You are uncertain. And this conditioning may not just be societal or cultural. It may also be familial. I was working the other day with this dad, and having seen his wife a few days earlier, we were talking about the fact that it seems like he avoids problems and feels very agitated when she brings them up. To her, when she brings up the problem, this is her way of saying, I love us and I want to solve this so that we can come closer. In his family, however, every conflict led to huge splits, sometimes leading to no talking at all. If he ever brought up anything that concerned him, the rest of the family ganged up on him. He felt on the outside. So you can see how this man has been conditioned from his family. And this doesn't happen just to men, right? This is generational trauma. This is a generational legacy of we don't solve problems, we don't talk about conflict because confrontation brings the system down. From his position, when his wife brings up a problem, he is thinking, she doesn't care enough about the relationship. She wants us to split. Him avoiding the problem isn't him not caring, which is what she sees, rightfully so from her perspective. But from his perspective, her bringing up a problem means that she doesn't care to sustain the relationship. And so he feels agitated because he's disappointed. He feels from his end that he is the only one trying to keep the vibe positive, to minimize problems in order to avoid issues in the relationship. Do you now see how both of them can be completely right, but how these two right perspectives will not help at all in bridging the gap that has formed? So if you've been taught to show love through effort and endurance, you don't always know how to join her in the emotional world that she lives in. When she says she's tired, you either rush to fix or you freeze. Here is what your wife, your partner may not realize. You're not indifferent, you're uncertain. And it's not that you don't want to help, it's that you don't want to fail. So sometimes you wait for clear instructions and she interprets that as apathy. Both are wrong and both are right. Both of you are speaking love, but you're doing it in different dialects of fear. So how do we go from scorekeeping to connecting again? There's a quiet moment in many relationships, a kind of emotional reckoning, when you realize that winning the argument no longer feels like winning. That is when you're ready to shift from scorekeeping to soulkeeping in a way. When we are keeping score, we're asking, who's doing more? When we are connecting, we ask, how do we both feel less alone? The antidote to resentment isn't equality, it's empathy. And empathy starts with slowing down enough to see each other, to notice the effort, to name the fatigue, to remember that beneath it all, beneath the lists and the logistics, are people who used to care about each other, to touch each other not out of habit but out of desire. That spark isn't gone. It is just buried under responsibility. To uncover it, you don't need any grand gestures. I will keep on saying that. You need genuine ones. I don't want you to go out on a date night because you should. I'd prefer if you make him the coffee just the way they like it because you remembered. It doesn't have to be about family dinner every Sunday. It's so much better to just skip that and eat on the couch tonight and talk like you used to. These small acts don't fix resentment per se, but what they do is way better. They disarm it. Here's the thing. Resentment doesn't stay between partners. It seeps into tone, touch, timing. Children grow up absorbing that emotional climate as a template for love. When they see one parent overgiving and the other one under engaging, they learn that this imbalance is normal. They don't understand why this is happening. They cannot see who's right, who's wrong. They cannot see that both of them are right. So what happens is that they see that this is the normal way. This is the way that men and women act in relationships. This is how a family runs. Instead, when they see two parents who talk honestly about their needs, who repair, who apologize, who sometimes disagree but stay kind, they learn that love can be safe and human. So working on your relationship, working on this resentment isn't selfish. It's generational hygiene in a sense. You are curing generational, cultural, social trauma that children inherit, that we've inherited, that our parents inherited, and we just pass on down generation after generation. Let it stop with you. It's how we clear emotional clutter before it becomes our children's inheritance. You know, I like to end with practical steps, but not just the tactical stuff, but ones that hit both head and heart. So here are a few that I have seen change relationships from the inside out. For one, name your pattern, not your partner. Instead of pinpointing that he never helps or she never helps, try saying, I've noticed that I tend to over-control situations when I am stressed. Or if that feels like a lot, if you're in such a place that you feel this reaction, this push, you don't want to take on any more than you already have, you can instead try saying, I am feeling a little bit overwhelmed right now. Here is what I need you to do. Now I know that this doesn't solve the core problem, which is I want to see that you care enough to remember, to see what has fallen behind and just take over, to prove to me that you love me. I know that this is not met if you have to ask. But it is the first step to take away the blame, to ask for what you need, and then we'll get there. We'll get to understanding. We'll get to healing the part of you that needs him to know. Otherwise, she doesn't feel cared for, because that is coming from something deeper that I am willing to bet existed way before the relationship. And we will also take care of the part that makes him fear that if he does it, it's actually going to be worse than if he just waits for you to tell him exactly what to do. Because there is a trust issue there. I fear what will come next. I don't trust that I can handle your disappointment. And that probably also comes from a time way before the relationship as well. And that is why I work with my couples both in joint sessions, but also individual ones. Because a lot of the things that we bring into the relationship, a lot of the things that we think about each other, we worry about each other, a lot of things that we fear, come from core beliefs, come from traumas that we carry from our family of origin. And so working on those, taking our responsibility, solving our own legacy, what it is that we carry and we bring to the table, does wonders when we join in and try to heal the hurt parts of the relationship as we heal our hurt parts. All of that to say that it's important to invite curiosity. That will lower defensiveness. A second thing you can both try is to share the why. When you ask for something, add meaning. Here's an example. I feel more peaceful when the kitchen is clean at night. It helps me truly rest. Now, if you say it that way, you're not nagging. You are sharing what peace looks like for you. Do you notice how different it is from saying, oh, come on, help me out with the kitchen for once. I am so tired. I need it to be clean. That is where you will get a response of, just leave it. I'm tired too. Why do I have to do it? Why can't we just leave it for tomorrow? And your disappointment will not just be about the dishes. Your disappointment will be about him or her not caring to bring you peace. Do you see how it goes way deeper? And how if we don't address it, it creates holes in the relationship? Because it's not about the dishes. Because now that I haven't discussed it, because I haven't asked for it in a more vulnerable way, in a way that shows a part of me and the true need behind the dishes. Now I am assuming that you don't love me enough to care if I truly rest. And that's not true. It's not that she doesn't care, that he doesn't care. It's that they don't know why you're asking for this. And so it just seems like control, like nagging, like do things my way. I like the dishes cleaned at night and you're okay with it in the morning, but no, it has to happen my way. And that is going to cause resistance. When you share your need, you disarm the other person. Number 3, my favorite, 15-minute emotional check-ins. Once a week, sit together after bedtime. Put phones completely away. Each of you gets 7 minutes to answer. 1, this is something that I've been carrying this week that you may have not noticed. And 2, here is something that I noticed you carry this week and I appreciated a lot. That's it. No fixing, just witnessing. Moving on, number 4, let's redistribute praise. Notice what it is that you usually praise your partner for and switch it up. If you often praise competence, like, ooh, you handled bedtime really well, try praising presence. It felt calm having you with us tonight. It may seem small and insignificant, but it's really important because what it does is that it rewires emotional reward toward connection, not productivity. A 5th thing you could do is to stop performing help. If you're doing something to prove a point, pause. Ask yourself, am I doing this in order to truly connect? Or am I trying to do it so that I can prove something, so that I can use it later to say, here's what I've done, so that I can win in the accounting war, in the scorekeeping? If it's the latter, put it down. You're not doing it for love. You're doing it to protest. And that is a conversation to be had. Because I know that deep down inside, you want to do it out of love. You want to do it and feel good about doing it. And so does your partner. Your partner would love it, not only if you just did what he or she asked, but that you did it feeling good. Because that would mean that you're partners, not just workmates, taking care of tasks. Do you see the difference? I'll leave you with this thought. Love and obligation can look identical from the outside. Both cook dinner. Both pick up the kids. Both say, I love you. But one feels alive and the other one feels heavy. Love isn't in the doing. It's in the energy that's underneath. When you act out of love, you expand. When you act out of obligation, you contract. Love says, I want to. Obligation says, I have to. Over time, one of them builds intimacy while the other one builds debt. So the work, the real work, isn't to stop caring. It's to start caring from your truth. To recognize when you are giving and that giving is rooted in fear, and to replace it with giving from choice. Because that's what partnership really is. It's not about 2 people performing goodness, but 2 people brave enough to stay honest, even when it's messy. And here is a little secret. When you stop trying to earn love, you start feeling it again. If this episode resonated with you and you feel like you want to go deeper, I have the 7-day Reconnect Challenge for couples. There, we turn these reflections into practical action and daily connection rituals that rebuild admiration, affection, and trust. And if you haven't yet, make sure that you join my Sunday Reconnect. This is my weekly newsletter or love letter with 1 insight, 1 exclusive tool, and 1 3-minute reset meant to bring you closer to yourself, to your partner, and to your family. Thank you for listening with an open heart, for choosing reflection over reaction, and for daring to believe that love can evolve. You guys are not broken. You're becoming. And next week, we go even deeper into that in the conversation that I have with Dr. Ashley Moreland. Join us as we talk about unbecoming, the process of peeling back layers of who you had to be in order to survive and returning to who you actually are. You don't want to miss it. Until then, take a breath, unclench your jaw, your shoulders, and remember that you're both doing the best that you can with the tools you were given. And now, you're learning new ones. Take care. I'll see you next Sunday. Bye-bye.